The last thing Donna Briggs wanted was to be seen. She sat in the parking lot of Millhaven Family Grocery for 11 minutes before she opened the car door. The engine was off, the heat was off. October in Montana had no patience for hesitation, and the cold had already crept in through the door seals and settled around her ankles. But she didn't move. She was counting. She already knew what the count was going to come to. She had counted it 3 times at the kitchen table before she left the house. She counted it twice in the car outside the elementary school when she dropped Caleb off. She counted it again at the red light on Whitmore Road with Lily in the back seat, singing something she'd learned from a cartoon, her small voice filling the whole car with the kind of sound that made a person feel the weight of every single thing they hadn't been able to give. $5.17. That was everything. Not everything in the account, though. That was almost true, too. That was everything she had in cash, which was the only way you could buy the things she was here to buy. The things on the discount rack in the back corner of the store where the dented cans lived, and the bread that was one day past the sell-by date sat in a wire basket with a handwritten sign that said "marked down" above it in blue marker. Credit cards didn't work for marked down items. The woman at the counter, Linda, had explained it to her 3 weeks ago with the kind of patience that made Donna feel worse than if Linda had been rude about it. Cash only, hon. That's just how it is. So Donna sat in the parking lot and counted $5.17. The cheapest loaf of bread on the markdown rack had been $289 last Thursday. That left her $228 for whatever else was back there. A dented can of beans was usually 79 cents. Sometimes there were bruised apples, 4 for $1. She had worked it out in her head so many times that she could do it without thinking the arithmetic of near nothing, the math of making it to Friday. Friday was 9 days away. She had done harder things than walk into a grocery store. She had buried her son in November of last year, stood at the graveside in the snow, with a 4-year-old on her hip and a 7-year-old pressed against her leg, and she had not made a sound because the kids were watching, and the kids needed to see that the world did not end when it broke your heart. She had driven home from that graveside and made grilled cheese sandwiches because it was lunchtime and children needed to eat regardless of what had just happened to the world. She had done that. She had gotten out of bed every day since. She had enrolled Caleb in 2nd grade at Millhaven Elementary, walked him to his classroom. On the first day, met his teacher, asked the right questions, watched him to walk to his desk with his backpack still on because he hadn't realized yet that you took it off. She had taken Lily to her pediatric checkup, sat in the waiting room with the toys, and the other parents answered the questions about diet and sleep and developmental milestones with the steady voice of a woman who had those answers because she had been paying attention. She had applied for 12 jobs in 3 months and gotten one of them. Cleaning offices at a medical building on the edge of town, 12 hours a week at $9 an hour, and she had been grateful for it. She could walk into a grocery store. She got out of the car. The bell above the door rang when she pushed it open. She knew the sound by now. She'd been coming here since the summer when things had started to get tight, and the big chain store 20 minutes away had felt too exposed, too bright, too many people who might know her from before, from the years when Kevin was alive, and she was just a grandmother who came to visit and brought good wine and homemade pie and didn't have to think about the cost of a loaf of bread. Kevin had been 31 years old when the phone rang. She didn't let herself think about that in the grocery store. She had learned where she was allowed to think about it and where she wasn't. Not in front of the children, not at work where the maintenance of composure was a professional requirement she took seriously. Not in grocery stores because grocery stores required her to be functional, to count and compare and decide. And grief made all of that impossible if she let it get in. She was allowed to think about it in the car sometimes. At night after the kids were in bed and the house had gone quiet in that specific way that houses go quiet when the people in them are finally still. That was when she let the weight of it settle fully onto her. She didn't fight it. She had learned that fighting it made it worse. You let it settle and you sat with it, and then you got up in the morning. Millhaven Family Grocery was the kind of store that still had handwritten signs above the produce and a bulletin board near the door, covered in index cards advertising lawnmowers for sale and babysitters available, and a church potluck every 3rd Sunday. The floors were wood, the light was warm and a little yellow. There were 4 aisles and a meat counter in the back and a register up front where either Linda or a young man named Danny ran the show depending on the day. On Tuesday afternoons, it was Danny, maybe 19, with a kind face and the slightly overwhelmed expression of someone who had not been doing this job long enough to have developed a professional mask for it. Donna walked in with her eyes on the floor. She went past the produce without stopping. She went past the dairy cooler. She didn't slow down at the bread aisle because the bread aisle was full-price bread, and full-price bread was not something she was here for. She went to the back corner to the markdown rack, and she stood in front of it and looked at what was there. One loaf of white bread, day old. The sticker said $2.89, but someone had crossed it out in pen and written $2.54 beneath it, which meant Linda had probably done that this morning because the bread was now 2 days old. And Linda did things like that without being asked because Linda was a decent human being who had noticed over 3 weeks of Tuesday visits the particular way Donna Briggs moved through her store. $2.50 for the bread. That left her $2.67. There were no dented cans today. The bottom shelf was empty except for a single can of cream of mushroom soup that had a small dent on the side but was still marked full price because the dent was minor. Donna looked at it for a moment and put it back. There was a paper bag of bruised pears on the produce end cap with a sign that said 6 for $1.50. She counted 6 that were still mostly firm. She put them in the basket she'd taken from the door. Bread, $2.50. Pears, $1.50. Total $4.10. She had $1.17 left over, which was not enough for anything but was better than nothing, and she had gotten very good at being grateful for better than nothing. She walked to the front. Danny was behind the counter. There was one person ahead of her, an older man in a canvas jacket who was buying motor oil and a bag of beef jerky. He counted exact change. He left. Donna stepped up. She put the bread and the pears on the belt. Danny scanned the bread. He scanned the pears. He hit the total. $4 even. Donna opened her change purse. She started counting out quarters. She had counted this out already. She knew she had the money. But her hands were doing what her hands had started doing sometime in the last several months, which was shaking when she was doing things she used to do without thinking. She pressed her fingertips against the counter to steady them. That was when the bell over the door rang behind her. She didn't turn around. She heard the heavy sound of boots on wood, a single set moving slow. She heard the soft sound of a cooler door opening and closing. She heard the footsteps cross the store and stop behind her in line. She was still counting quarters. She got the total on the counter, $4 exact, penny by penny, quarter by quarter, arranged into a neat stack because neat was the only thing she had left to offer. She looked up at Danny. Danny had gone very still. I was looking at something over her shoulder. Donna felt it before she understood it, the specific stillness of a room that has reorganized itself around a person who has just entered it. She turned her head slightly, not all the way. In her peripheral vision, she could see the shape of the man behind her. Large, a wall of a man, leather vest with patches she didn't look at directly. Gray beard, arms like bridge cables, boots that had put in a long mileage. She turned back to the counter. She picked up her bag. She had what she came for. She needed to get Lily from Mrs. Patterson's by 3, and it was already close to 2:15, and she was going to be fine, and she was going to leave. And this was just a Tuesday afternoon in October, and she was absolutely fine. Her mouth opened. She had not planned for her mouth to open. The words came out before she could stop them, aimed at the middle of Danny's chest because she couldn't make herself look at his face. "Do you have any expired bread for my children?" She said it quieter than she'd intended, like she hoped he wouldn't hear, like she could make the words small enough to take back. "Anything past date that you'd be throwing away. I just thought if you had something in the back." She stopped. The room had gone completely still. She could hear the refrigerated hum of the dairy cooler on the other side of the store. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. She could hear Danny breathing. She could not hear the man behind her breathing at all, which was somehow worse than if he had made a sound. Her face had gone hot from her collar to her hairline. She closed her hand around the handles of her bag. She started to push her coins toward Danny across the counter, a reflex like if she paid fast enough, she could make this moment unhappen. "Ma'am." The voice came from behind her, low and controlled, not loud, not aggressive. The kind of voice that had learned to move through difficult rooms without adding to the difficulty in them. "Hold on a minute." She went still. Slow footsteps, not crowding her, just moving to the counter. A large hand appeared beside hers on the wood surface, and it set a can of black coffee down with a quiet sound, and then it rested there. That hand, just resting, not touching anything she'd set down, just present, like a period at the end of a sentence. Danny, the voice again. Ring up everything she's got, and then she's not done yet. A pause, and the voice shifted, aimed at her now, rather than the cashier. Would you look at me a second, please? She didn't look at him. She was looking at the counter, and she was pressing her palms flat against the wood, and it was not working. Please, just that word. She looked at him. It was 61, maybe 62. Built like a man who had worked with his hands his entire life and had not stopped. His beard was full and going silver at the sides. His face had the specific topography of a life that had not been easy, not hard, in the way that makes a person bitter, but in the way that makes a person steady, the way a riverbed gets smooth from decades of water moving over it. His eyes were a particular shade of gray that she would remember for the rest of her life, not because they were remarkable to look at, but because of what was in them. Not pity. She had braced herself for pity. She had spent 8 months constructing defenses against pity in the specific kind of humiliation that comes wrapped inside it. What was in his eyes was something else entirely. Recognition. The kind a person carries when they have seen this exact thing before, and the sight of it cost them something they never got back. There is no expired bread here, he said. Not for you, not today. She blinked. What my name is doesn't matter yet, he said. What matters is that you and I are going to walk back through this store, and we're going to fill a cart with everything you came in here, hoping you could buy, and I'm going to pay for it, and we're not going to make a thing of it. You understand? Sir, I can't. It's not charity, he said before she could finish. His voice was flat and certain the way a fact is flat, and certain not a performance of conviction, but the thing itself. It's groceries. People buy groceries every day. Today I'm buying yours. That's all this is. Are you all right with that? She could feel Danny watching them. She could feel the two other customers at the back of the store who had gone quiet at some point in the last 30 seconds. She could feel all of it pressing down on her, and under different circumstances she would have said no and walked out and cried in her car for 10 minutes on principle because she was 58 years old and she had a degree in accounting and she had raised a good man and she did not accept charity from strangers. But she had Waldier 17 in her change purse and 9 days until Friday. And Lily had asked about strawberries that morning in a voice so small and so particular that it had lodged itself somewhere behind Donna's sternum and had not moved since. She nodded once, small. All right then, he turned to Danny. Get her a cart. Danny moved faster than she'd seen him move in 3 weeks of coming to the store. He came around the counter with a cart and looked genuinely relieved to have something specific to do with himself. The man put his hand out. Rex, he said. She shook it. Donna, Donna. He repeated her name once like he was learning it and wanted to get it right. What do your grandkids eat? The word grandkids stopped her. She hadn't told him she had grandkids. He nodded at her hands. Crayon mark in your left wrist. Came off a kid's hand onto yours when she grabbed you. My guess is she's small, 4 maybe. Donna looked at her wrist. Lily had grabbed her hand in the car that morning. She'd been coloring before breakfast. 4, she said. And 7, boy and a girl. What do they like? It wasn't quite a question. It was an opening. Lily likes strawberries, Donna said. Caleb likes peanut butter. He'd eat it 3 times a day if I let him. Then let's start there. He walked behind her. Not in front. He let her push the cart and stayed half a step back, which she understood without being told was a deliberate thing, a way of saying this is still your errand and your kitchen and your life. I am just here. They went to the produce first. He told her to pick strawberries. She picked 1 container. He put a second one in the cart without comment. They went to the bread aisle. He told her to pick 2 loaves, 1 for sandwiches and 1 for toast, because children went through bread faster than adults expected. She picked 1 white and 1 wheat. He nodded. They went to the dairy cooler. Milk butter, a block of sharp cheddar, because he asked her once, does anybody in your house like sharp cheddar? And she said, yes, me. And he put it in without ceremony. They went to the peanut butter. She reached for the small jar, the 12-ounce, the one that was $2.49. He reached past her and put the 28-ounce in the cart. She opened her mouth. He said, kids his age go through it faster than you expect. Trust me. She closed her mouth. They went to the meat section. He bought chicken thighs, ground beef, a pack of pork chops. He looked at the hot dogs and looked at her, and She said Caleb's birthday was in 2 weeks and he put in 2 packs of hot dogs without being asked. He bought oatmeal and pasta and a jar of marinara sauce and a box of macaroni and cheese and a bag of rice and dry beans and a canister of Quaker oats and 2 cans of diced tomatoes and a can of kidney beans. Then he stopped in the cereal aisle and picked up the name brand cereal, the one that cost 3 times the store brand, and put it in the cart. She put it back. He put it back in the cart. Saturdays, he said in the tone of a man stating a rule rather than making a suggestion. Saturdays should have something special for breakfast. That's not negotiable. She looked at him. There was no logical argument available against Saturdays having something special. She pushed the cart. By the time they got back to the front, the cart was full enough that she couldn't see over it. Danny was standing at the register with the look of a 19-year-old who had just watched something happen that he was going to be thinking about for a long time. There were 3 other people in the store, 2 women and a man, and all 3 of them had found reasons to move to the front half of the store over the last several minutes. One of the women, somewhere in her 70s, had her hand pressed flat over her mouth and was not making any effort to pretend she wasn't watching. Danny scanned everything. He scanned for a long time. The number on the register climbed to 161.43. Rex pulled a worn leather wallet from the back pocket of his jeans. It was old leather, soft at the fold from years of use. He laid down $200 bills without looking at the total. Keep the change in her name, he said. Anything she comes in for this month, you take it out of that balance. When it's gone, you call me. He wrote his number on the back of a receipt from his own pocket and slid it across the counter. Danny took it with both hands. Rex bagged the groceries. He was methodical about it. Heavy things at the bottom, bread and eggs on top, cold things together. Donna stood beside him and reached for a bag twice, and both times he took it from her hands gently, and the second time he said quietly, "Your job right now is to let me do this. That's all." She put her hands at her sides. He carried the bags out in 2 trips. She walked beside him on the first, and he told her she didn't have to come back in. He'd get the rest. She stood by her car and watched him go back in. He came out with the second load and put it in the trunk with the specific efficiency of a man who had been moving heavy things his whole life and saw no reason to be dramatic about it. He closed the trunk. She was looking at the ground. "Thank you," she said. The words came out intact, which surprised her. She had expected them to break apart somewhere in the middle. "I don't know how to." "You don't need to know," he said. "Drive safe. Your girl is waiting." She looked up. He was already stepping back from the car, not turning away yet, just giving her the distance she needed to collect herself. "What's your name?" she said. "Your whole name." "Rex Holden." He said it like it was just information no more weighted than a weather report. "Iron-packed MC. Most people in this county know the name, even if they've never met me. Figured you should know who you're thanking." She nodded. She got in the car. She drove to Mrs. Patterson's. She picked up Lily. Lily climbed into the back seat and immediately found the strawberries in the grocery bag at her feet and let out a sound that Donna was completely unprepared for. A small, pure, open sky sound of happiness, the kind that a 4-year-old makes when they have not yet learned that happiness should be rationed or held back in case it runs out. Donna drove home with both hands on the wheel and her jaw clenched. She didn't cry until she was putting groceries away with the kitchen door closed. She cried for 4 minutes. She counted. Then she washed her face, opened the door, and started making dinner. The knock came at 6:47. She was at the stove, pork chops with the bruised apples she'd bought on the markdown rack, which she'd forgotten about in the afternoon's events, and which turned out to be perfect with butter and a little brown sugar from the back of the pantry. Caleb was at the kitchen table doing homework. Lily was in the living room with her crayons. 3 knocks, not loud, not soft, even. The knock of someone who understood how sound moved through a house with children in it. Donna turned off the burner. She went to the front door and looked through the side window before she touched the handle. She'd learned to do this in the last 8 months quietly without drama. Just a habit, the way certain situations teach certain lessons without announcing themselves as lessons. Rex Holden was on her porch. Behind him at the curb and along the street in both directions, there were motorcycles. She counted them without meaning to. 23 bikes parked nose to tail, not blocking her driveway, not in her yard, just there present, taking up the quiet street with the particular rumble silence of engines recently turned off. The men who had ridden them were on the sidewalk, not crowding her yard, not coming up the walk, standing, some of them talking quietly among themselves, some just standing, watching the street, giving her the privacy of her own front porch. She opened the door 3 inches. Rex was looking at her with the same steady gray eyes. His hands were at his sides. He was not performing anything. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm sorry to come to your house. I know how this looks, and I know that's not a small thing, 20-odd men showing up on your street after dark. I want to ask you something, and if your answer is no, we get back on our bikes and we leave and it ends here. Nobody is going to be anything but respectful about that. You hear me?" She heard him. "At the store today, he said you asked for expired bread for your grandkids. That is not a question a person asks after one bad week. That is a question a person asks after a long time of bad weeks strung together. Am I wrong about that?" She didn't answer right away. He waited. "No," she said. "You're not wrong." He nodded once, slow. "I'm not here to fix your life," he said. "I don't think you need someone to fix your life. I think you need tonight to be easier than it has been, and maybe tomorrow too. My brothers and I have some things in the trucks. Food, firewood because it's October and I noticed your porch light is out, which in my experience usually means things inside the house aren't much better. One of my men is an electrician. One does heating and cooling. I'd like to ask if we can come in. We'll be out in 2 hours. You won't lift a finger. You say yes, we come in. You say no, we leave. So the only two options." She stood there with her hand on the 3-inch gap of open door, and she thought about Kevin, who had been 31 years old when the truck went through the intersection at 62 miles an hour. She thought about Amanda, Kevin's wife, who had stood at the graveside, and then 3 weeks later had stood in Donna's living room and said she loved the kids, but she wasn't built for this, and she was sorry, so sorry. And Donna had said it was okay, even though it wasn't okay and never would be okay. She thought about Caleb's face the last time she told him they couldn't have pizza on Friday like they used to, the way he'd nodded like a small adult accepting information he didn't have the tools to process. She thought about Lily with the strawberries in the back seat 20 minutes ago. She opened the door. Rex stepped in. He stopped in the entry and removed his vest without being asked, the way you remove your shoes in someone else's home as a gesture of respect for the space. He folded it carefully and draped it over the chair by the door. Caleb appeared in the hallway. 7 years old. Kevin's nose. Kevin's serious eyes. Kevin's habit of holding very still when he was assessing a situation, rather than running toward it or away from it. He stood in the hall and looked at Rex the way a child looks at something large that has not yet declared its intentions. Rex looked at him directly. "Hey, buddy." Caleb said nothing. His eyes moved to his grandmother. "This is Rex," Donna said. "He's a friend. He's going to bring some people in to help with a few things around the house." Caleb looked back at Rex. "Are you a biker?" "I am." "Do you have a motorcycle?" "I do." "What kind?" "Harley Davidson, 2003 Road King, dark red." Caleb considered this seriously for a moment. "That's a good one." "I think so too." Rex looked at him steadily. "You got homework tonight, Caleb." "Almost done." "Then finish it before you come see the bikes through the window. Deal?" Something moved across Caleb's face. The specific expression of a child who has just been given a structure they didn't know they needed. He nodded and went back to the kitchen without further discussion. Rex turned to Donna. His voice dropped. "Walk me through the house," he said. "Quickly. I want to know what needs doing before I bring anyone in." She walked him through it. She had not let anyone walk through her house in 8 months. She had not let anyone see the thermostat set to 58 degrees. She had not let anyone see the single mattress in the corner of the living room that had been there since September when she'd sold the couch because the electric bill had come in and she'd needed the $80. She had not let anyone see the kids' room where 2 mattresses sat on the floor because she hadn't been able to afford bed frames, or her own room where clothes lived in laundry baskets along the wall, because there was no dresser, or the kitchen where the pantry shelves were half empty in a way that no amount of careful arrangement had been able to disguise. Rex walked through all of it. He said nothing. He looked at things the way a man looks at things when he is making a list in his head, not judging them, not assigning blame or sympathy, just seeing, just cataloging what was real. When they came back to the kitchen, he stood with his hands in his pockets and looked out the window at the dark yard. "I'm going to bring my men in," he said. "Is that all right?" "Yes," she said. I went to the front door and nodded once at the men on the sidewalk. They came up the walk in a loose line, and they came quietly. 23 men in leather vests with patched shoulders and scarred hands, carrying toolboxes and grocery bags, and a bundle of firewood, and a folding table, and they fanned out through the house without being told twice what needed doing. The man they called Cobb went straight to the basement. She heard the sound of a wrench on a pipe within 2 minutes. The man they called Watts took the panel cover off the electrical box in the hallway and started working without any preamble. Two men she didn't know began unloading food into her pantry with the organized efficiency of people who had done exactly this before, which she had a feeling they had. A younger man, maybe 30, found Lily in the living room and sat down on the floor and let her show him her crayon drawings one by one, which was apparently the correct approach because Lily did not normally show her drawings to strangers, but she was showing them to him with detailed commentary. An older man with a broad, weathered face and a gray braid down his back set a pile of firewood next to her fireplace and got a fire going without making any production of it. He moved with the careful deliberateness of a large man who had spent decades being careful with breakable things. His name, she would find out later, was Hank. Rex stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the hall and watched all of it. Then he turned to Donna. "Tell me what happened," he said. "All of it if you want to, or just enough. Whatever you're comfortable with." She told him. She told him about Kevin, about the accident, about the phone call on a November afternoon that had reorganized everything she understood about how the world worked. She told him about Amanda, about the conversation in the living room 3 weeks after the graveside, about watching a woman she had tried to love drive away from her grandchildren and not come back. She told him about the job at the medical building, 12 hours a week, $9 an hour, and about the daily arithmetic of almost enough. She told him about the interviews that had gone quiet. She told him about the ladies, about the couch she'd sold, about being 58 years old in a job market that had very specific ideas about what 58-year-old bookkeepers were worth. Then she told him about the letter. She hadn't planned to tell him about the letter, but she was already talking, and the letter had been sitting in the back of her mind since morning, like something with teeth, and she was tired, and Rex Holden was standing in her kitchen with those steady gray eyes listening the way almost nobody listened anymore. The letter had come 3 weeks ago from a family law attorney in Billings. It represented Gary Briggs, Kevin's younger brother, who was requesting a formal review of Donna's guardianship of Caleb and Lily on the grounds that she lacked the financial stability to provide adequately for the children's needs. There was a court date, 6 weeks from last Monday. Rex said nothing when she finished. I was quiet for a long time. Outside the kitchen window, the fire had started in the living room, and the orange light of it moved on the wall. The radiator in the hall clicked and hissed in a way it had not done in 3 weeks, which meant Cobb had found whatever had been wrong with it. The house was already warmer than it had been when she walked in that afternoon with the pears and the day-old bread. "Tell me about Gary," Rex said. She told him. Gary Briggs was 44 years old. He sold commercial real estate in Billings. He wore good suits and had a good handshake, and had not visited his brother in the last 3 years of Kevin's life, due to a disagreement about money that Kevin had never fully explained to her. He had not come to Kevin's funeral. He had sent flowers with a card that said, "In memory of." He had not called to check on the children in the 8 months since. Now he wanted them. "You know why," Rex said. "I don't know for certain," she said. "But Kevin owned his house. When he died, his estate goes to his children held in trust until they're adults. Gary is named in Kevin's will as alternate executor if I was unable to serve. If he gets custody of the kids, he controls the estate," Rex said. "He controls the estate," she said. Rex nodded slowly, like a man confirming something he had already suspected the shape of. He looked at the folded piece of paper on the kitchen table, the court letter she had left there that morning. He looked at it without touching it. "You have a lawyer," he said. "I can't." "You have a lawyer," he said, not a question, a statement about what was going to happen next. "His name is Wade Flynn. He does family law. He used to ride with us years ago before he went back to school and made something different of himself. He's better than good. He's what Gary Briggs's lawyers will not be expecting, which is someone who has spent 30 years representing people that other lawyers had already written off." He paused. "I'll call him tonight. I can't pay. I know." He said it without pity or particular weight. "Just I know. Wade owes me a favor from a long time ago that I have never called in. Tonight I'm calling it." Donna stared at him. The fire was burning in the living room. She could hear Lily laughing at something the young man on the floor had said. She could hear the low sound of Hank's voice talking to Caleb about something she couldn't make out. She could smell the food that had been brought in, something warm and rich and layered. And she realized she had not eaten since a piece of toast at 7 that morning, and her body was registering the smell with an urgency that was embarrassing in its directness. "Why are you doing this?" she said. The question came out quiet, not accusatory, just asking the way you ask when you need to understand something before you can accept it. Rex looked at the orange light on the wall for a moment before he answered. "I had a sister," he said. "Her name was Mary. She was 3 years younger than me. She had one son, 8 years old. Her husband walked out when the boy was 2 and never came back. She did everything right. She worked 2 jobs. She held it together for 6 years by herself, and she did it well. And I did not know how bad it had gotten until I got a phone call on a Tuesday morning." He stopped. His jaw moved once. He looked at the table. Nobody helped her. That is the thing I have never been able to get past. Not one person in that town reached a hand out. She was too proud to ask, and nobody looked close enough to see that she was asking with everything she wasn't saying out loud. He looked up at Donna. "Today you walked into a store with $5.17 and you asked for expired bread for your grandkids." "I heard it. I'm not walking past it. I couldn't walk past it. That's all this is." She didn't say anything for a moment. "Then I'm sorry about Mary." He nodded, accepted it the way a man accepts something that is true and final and unchangeable. He moved on. "Come eat," he said. "Hank has been cooking since we left the parking lot, and if you let his food get cold, he'll take it personally and he won't say so, but you'll know." She almost laughed. It came out of her as a short breath, not quite a laugh, but close enough to surprise her. She ate at her own table with her grandchildren and 23 men who had ridden 40 minutes on a cold October night to make sure she could. Caleb ate until he was done and then asked if he could look at the bikes through the window, and Rex said yes when his plate was clean, and Caleb cleaned his plate in approximately 4 minutes. Lily fell asleep against Donna's arm halfway through the meal with a half-eaten roll in her hand, the way children fall asleep when they have finally been warm and fed enough that the body decides it is allowed to rest. Donna held her. Hank leaned over at some point and said in the quiet voice of a large man who had learned over many decades how to be gentle, "She's good. She's better than good. Eat." Donna ate. Afterward, when the dishes were done and the men were loading tools back into the trucks outside and Caleb was asleep on the floor blanket with Lily beside him and the fire had gone to steady coals, Rex came back to the kitchen one last time. He put a card on the counter, a phone number in handwriting that belonged to a man who didn't write much. "Friday," he said, "my brother Earl runs a shop in Hardin, Holden Automotive. He needs a booker. $20 an hour, full-time health insurance after 90 days. He has been trying to find someone for 8 months, and he cannot find someone he trusts, and his books are a disaster." He looked at her steadily. "You go meet him Friday at 10 in the morning. If you don't like him or he doesn't treat you right, you call me and I find you something else. But I think you are going to walk out with a job." She looked at the card. "That number is mine," he said. "Day or night, anything you need." He put his vest back on. The patches settled on his shoulders. He looked like what he was, again, the president of a motorcycle club that most people in Millhaven, Montana had very specific ideas about and almost none of the right ones. "Lock this behind me," he said. "Get some sleep. Your kids need you rested." He pulled the door closed. She stood in her kitchen and listened to 23 motorcycle engines start up on her quiet street one by one in sequence and then pull away together. She turned off the kitchen light. She went to the living room and looked at Caleb and Lily asleep near the fire. The radiator hummed. The porch light was on outside, throwing a clean rectangle of light across the front yard for the first time in weeks. She sat down on the floor with her back against the couch and she let herself fall apart for a few minutes in the quiet house. Then she put herself back together. She got up. She made sure the door was locked. She went to bed. Friday was 9 days away. For the first time in a very long time, she believed she could get there. Friday arrived the way important days always arrive, without announcement, dressed like any other morning. Donna was up at 5:30. She made oatmeal for the kids and got them dressed while the sun was still below the horizon. She dropped Caleb at Millhaven Elementary and watched him walk through the doors with his backpack on, and she thought as she thought every morning how much he walked like his father. She dropped Lily at Mrs. Patterson's, a 66-year-old woman with a large warm house and 3 cats and an inexhaustible patience for small children. Then she drove to Hardin. She sat in her car in the parking lot of Holden Automotive at 9:55 and looked at the building. 8 bays, 3 hydraulic lifts, 4 vehicles already in bays with hoods up, men moving around them with the quiet, coordinated efficiency of people who knew their work without having to think about it. She had interviewed for 14 jobs in 9 months. She was good at interviews. She had always been good at them, which was the particular irony of a year spent applying for positions and getting 4 callbacks and one job that paid $9 an hour. The market had a specific problem with women who were 58 years old and had a gap in their formal employment record, even when that gap was explained and the work done during it was real and verifiable. She got out of the car. The front office was exactly what Rex had described. Disaster was not an overstatement. There were stacks of paper on every horizontal surface. The filing cabinet had all 4 drawers open. The computer had what appeared to be approximately 60 browser tabs running simultaneously. There was a coffee maker on a card table in the corner next to a single folding chair. A man came in from the shop side. He was Rex's age, built leaner, with grease on his forearms and the same gray-eyed steadiness as his brother, but quieter about it, less mass behind it. Donna Briggs, he said. Earl Holden. He put out his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm without trying to prove anything. He looked around the office. Rex tell you it was bad. He said it was a mess. Rex is charitable. He pulled a stack of folders off the guest chair. Sit. Coffee. Please. He poured 2 mugs and sat on the edge of his desk because there was nowhere else. Here's what I've got, he said. 8 to 12 cars a day, 6 days a week. 6 full-time mechanics, 2 part-time. Accounts receivable. I can't entirely account for because I've been running this office myself since January, and I'm a mechanic, not an accountant. Had 3 people try to work here this spring. None lasted a month. He looked at her directly. Rex says you ran books for a dental office 19 years. I did. He says you can get a mess organized. I can. He looked at the stacks. Invoices back to February, not cross-referenced against payments. Accounts owing me money I've lost track of. State tax filings due in 6 weeks. That sounds like 6 weeks of work, she said. Maybe 8. After that, it's maintenance. He studied her for a moment the way his brother had studied her in the grocery store, not unkindly, just with full attention. 20 an hour, he said. 5 days, 8 to 3:30. Health insurance after 90 days, family coverage. 2 weeks paid vacation after the first year. He paused. Rex says you've got grandkids. I do. 3:30 means you're home before they are. You manage your time right during the day. You're out at 3:30. I don't ask people to stay late. You want the job? Yes. He put out his hand again. Monday, he said, 8 o'clock. She drove home. She picked up Lily. She picked up Caleb. She made dinner and got everyone to bed and sat at the kitchen table afterward with her hands around a cup of tea and let the fact of it settle into her the way warm water settles into cold ground. She had a job. $20 an hour. Benefits. 3:30. She had a job. She called Rex that night. He answered on the second ring. I start Monday, she said. A pause, then good. Thank you, she said. For Earl, for all of it. Thank Earl, he said. He needed someone. You're going to be good for that shop. She started to say something else, and he said, get some sleep, Donna. Your kids need you rested. She smiled in spite of herself. You already said that. Still true, he said and hung up. She got some sleep. Monday came in cold and clean. Donna was at the shop at 7:55. Earl arrived at 8 on the dot, coffee already in hand. He looked at her, looked at the office, still stacked everywhere, and said, you sure? I've seen worse, she said, which was not entirely true, but was the right thing to say. She came out the other side of Earl Holden's books in 14 days. By the end of the first week, she had sorted every piece of paper in the office into filed pending or urgent. The urgent pile contained 11 accounts that owed the shop money that Earl did not know about because the invoices had never been properly followed up on. By the end of the second week, she had recovered over $9,000 in outstanding payments, with 4 phone calls and 2 letters. And she had the filing system running on a clean digital platform, using software she already knew from 19 years of dental office work. Earl came into the office on the Thursday of the second week and turned in a slow circle. How, he said. You start with what's there, she said, and you go from there. He hired her officially that afternoon, signed the paperwork, and said she'd have insurance cards in 6 weeks. He also told her he was moving her to 22 an hour because he'd told her 20 when he didn't know what he was getting, and now he knew. And if you stay 6 months, he said, we talk about office manager. She shook his hand. The men in the shop started calling her Miss Donna by the end of week 2. Not in a diminutive way, but in the way that certain tradespeople use the word miss, which is a term of specific respect that means you have earned a place in their space, and they want you to know they recognize it. She ate lunch in the break room with them most days, and they talked about cars and football and kids and weekends. And they did not talk around her or treat her differently than they treated each other, which she appreciated more than she could easily have said. After 8 months of being looked at with sliding sympathy, it was a very specific and important kind of relief to sit in a room full of people and just be someone who worked there. She called Mrs. Patterson and reduced Lily's hours. She could pick Lily up at 3:15 now, which meant the cost dropped, which meant the math was different in a way that still made her breath catch when she worked it out. The first Sunday lunch at the Iron Pack Clubhouse happened at the end of October, 3 weeks after the night Rex had come to her house. Rex called on a Thursday. He said there was a lunch the last Sunday of every month, families welcome. He said it in the particular tone of a man offering something genuinely with no weight attached to the answer. She went. The clubhouse was a low building on the north end of town with a gravel lot and a long covered picnic area out back where tables had been set end to end and loaded with food. There were 50 people there, maybe more bikers and their wives and kids and parents, loud in the way large family gatherings are loud, comfortable, and overlapping. Caleb let go of Donna's hand within 4 minutes of arrival when he spotted three boys his approximate age chasing each other around a picnic table. Lily held on for 20 minutes. Then Hank's wife Barbara appeared with cookies and an offer to show Lily the cats that lived in the clubhouse, and Lily detached from Donna's leg and followed Barbara like she'd known her for years. Donna stood alone for a moment in the middle of all of it. Rex appeared at her elbow. He had a paper plate with ribs and potato salad, which he appeared to consider a complete meal. "You're standing like you're expecting to be asked to leave," he said. "Old habit," she said. "Bad one. Come sit down." She sat down. She ate Hank's cooking, which was extraordinary in the way that food made by large, quiet men who have been cooking outdoors for 30 years tends to be extraordinary. The potato salad had something in it she couldn't identify and did not ask about because she did not want to break the mystery. Cobb, who turned out to be 52 with a daughter in college and two grandkids of his own, sat across from her for 45 minutes and talked through the problem with his mother's water heater. Not because he needed advice, but because he was a person who processed things out loud, and she was a person who was good at listening, and between the two of them, they worked out that the heater was probably fine, but the pressure relief valve needed replacing. At some point in the afternoon, she looked up from her plate and saw Caleb in the parking lot with Rex. Both of them were looking at the Road King, and Rex was explaining something about the engine with the specific patience of a man who was not explaining because he expected full comprehension, but because the interest being shown deserved a real answer. She watched them for a moment. Then she looked away because some things you didn't stare at directly. She went home that evening with 2 containers of Barbara's leftovers, and Caleb talking for 35 minutes straight about motorcycles and Lily asleep in the back seat with a stuffed cat that Barbara had apparently given her, which Donna suspected had been one of the actual clubhouse cats at some point and decided not to pursue. The letter from Gary's attorney arrived on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the first one. She had been expecting it. Rex had warned her that Gary's team would file supplementary documentation before the hearing. She set it on the counter, she made dinner, she got the kids to bed. Then she sat at the kitchen table and opened it. It was worse than she had expected. Gary's attorney had submitted a declaration of financial instability, citing Donna's income history for the previous 18 months. It had her W-2s, her reduced hours, the months of underemployment. It had a credit report showing 2 late utility payments from March and April before the Iron Pact had come, when she'd been making impossible choices about which bill to delay. It had a declaration from a property inspector that she didn't recognize. She read it more carefully. The inspection had been done in August. No property inspector had ever visited her house. She read the attached photographs. Her house, her windows, her dead yard in August, the broken porch light, the rotted board on the front step. Someone had been standing in her yard in August taking photographs of her home from the outside. And Gary had those photographs, and he was using them in a court filing to argue that she could not adequately care for 2 children. She read it twice, then she picked up her phone and called Rex. He answered on the second ring. She read him the sections about the photographs. The August inspection. She kept her voice level. Rex was quiet for a moment. "I want you to scan that letter and send it to Wade tonight, all of it. He needs to see the photographs, and he needs to know exactly when they were taken." I don't have a scanner. Earl's shop does. I'll call him to leave the back door unlocked. You go now before it's late. Wade needs this tonight. She went. The shop was dark except for a single work light Earl had left on. The scanner was in the office. She fed the documents through page by page and emailed everything to Wade Flynn's address. She drove home. She locked the door. She looked in on the kids. Caleb was asleep with his arm over his face the way Kevin used to sleep, a detail that hit her in the sternum, the way it still did sometimes when she wasn't braced for it. Lily had 3 stuffed animals arranged along the edge of the mattress in the new bed frame that had arrived last weekend, courtesy of a club run that had apparently included a furniture collection route. And she was asleep with her mouth slightly open and her fist curled under her chin. Donna went to bed. She did not sleep for a long time. In the morning, she got up and made oatmeal and got the kids to school and went to work. Wade Flynn called at 11:15. She stepped outside into the gravel lot behind the shop with her coffee. Wade's voice was like a freight train running on careful tracks, large, controlled, unhurried. He had been practicing family law for 27 years. He had started defending people who couldn't afford other lawyers and kept doing it after he'd gotten good enough to charge significantly more, because it turned out he was angrier on their behalf than on anyone else's. I've looked at the filing, he said. The photographs are the most aggressive element, but they're also their weakest point if we work it correctly. Those images are from August. Your hearing is in 3 weeks. The house is not the same house it was in August. I want to do a walkthrough this week, get my own documentation. Thursday evening, kids home and present normal evening. Judge looks at current conditions versus August conditions, and they are not the same picture. Yes, she said, there's another element. Your employment situation has changed materially in the past 3 weeks. Earl is going to provide a letter stating your rate, your hours, and your start date. Your first 2 weeks of pay stubs go in front of the judge alongside that letter. What about the estate issue? A brief pause. Who told you about the estate? I worked it out myself. A sound that suggested he was slightly impressed. Yes, Gary's ultimate interest is control of the trust established for the children following Kevin's death. The trust is substantial. I've pulled the documents. Insurance and a property interest Kevin held. Total value in the range of $400,000. Donna said nothing. She had not known the total. Gary Briggs is not trying to raise your grandchildren, Wade said. He's trying to access their inheritance. Once I establish that clearly in front of the judge, the court has a very different picture of this petition. A grandmother with stable employment and a safe home and 2 healthy children against a man who has never visited those children and stands to control $400,000 of their money if he wins. I know which way that judge is going. What if she doesn't? Donna said. She will, he said. But if she doesn't, we appeal and win on appeal. I have not lost a custody case in 11 years. I am not starting with yours. She believed him. The problem arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 days before the hearing. She came out of the shop at 3:20 to find her car listing to the right. Both driver's side tires were flat rims nearly touching the gravel. She walked around the car, all 4 tires. She stood in the gravel lot and made herself breathe. Then she went inside and found Earl. Earl came out crouched, looked at the sidewalls. He stood up. His face had gone the particular blank of a man suppressing something. What? She said. He turned the front tire toward her. There was a cut in the sidewall. Clean, not a road hazard. All 4, same. Go back inside, he said quietly. I'll deal with the car. You need to call Rex. Rex was there in 20 minutes with Cobb and a man named Garrett who had a methodical eye for things that needed careful looking at. Garrett examined the tires, the gravel, the fence line at the back of the lot. He stood up and spoke to Rex in a voice too low for Donna to hear. Rex nodded and looked at her. Did Gary know where you worked? I didn't tell him, she said, but he hired a private investigator. He's been tracking me since at least August. Rex was quiet. Then we're going to document this before Earl touches anything. Photos first, then Earl fixes your car on the shop's time parts and labor on us. And starting tomorrow, Garrett is going to be spending some time in the vicinity of this parking lot during the day. Not obvious, just nearby. Gary Briggs has moved into something that is not just a legal matter anymore. Damaging property is a crime. I want to be ready for the next move he makes. She looked at the flat tires. He's scared, she said. Rex looked at her. If he was confident in the legal case, he wouldn't be cutting tires, she said. He does this because he thinks he's losing, which means Wade is right. Rex almost smiled. That's exactly right. Earl fixed the car himself during his lunch break and charged her nothing. 3 days before the hearing, Gary Briggs walked into the front office. She was at her desk processing invoices when the bell rang. She looked up. How was 44 good suit haircut by someone expensive? The practiced air of a man who had learned to use reasonableness as a weapon. He looked around the office with the specific expression of someone who is calculating the value of everything they are standing in front of. He looked at her. Donna, he said, you look well. Gary, she said. She did not stand. She kept her hands flat on the desk. I just wanted to have a conversation, he said, person to person. I feel like the lawyers have been doing all the talking, and I thought maybe I'm at work, she said. It won't take long. He was looking for a chair. Donna, I think we both want what's best for Caleb and Lily. I know what's best for Caleb and Lily, she said. I've been raising them for 8 months. He smiled, patient, practiced. That's exactly my concern. You've been doing this alone. You're 58. You've barely been making ends meet, and I'm working full time, she said. At $22 an hour, Earl can confirm that. Something shifted in his face. He had known this. Even so, he said, the long-term stability. You haven't called those children once, she said. Not in 8 months. You didn't come to your brother's funeral. You have never asked how they are. Donna Tisham, I'm asking you to leave, she said. Her voice was steady in a way that surprised her, steady all the way through. I have work to do. If you have something to say it to Wade Flynn through your lawyer. Leave now, Gary. He looked at her. The practiced patience had a fracture in it. You don't understand the position you're in, he said. I understand it completely, she said. Leave. I left. She sat at her desk for a moment after the bell stopped ringing. Then she picked up her phone and called Wade. He came to your workplace, Wade said. Yes, this is good. This is the behavior of someone watching their strategy unravel. I'm filing a motion tomorrow he won't enjoy. Stay clear of him between now and Tuesday. She stayed clear of him. She went to work. She came home. She made dinner. She helped Caleb with multiplication tables and listened to Lily's school stories and read to them at bedtime and turned off the lights. She was awake at 11 most nights in the dark, running through things the way you do when the thing you fear is not one specific event, but the space of time before you find out whether the worst thing happens. The Sunday before the hearing, Rex called. I'll be at the courthouse Tuesday, he said. Some of my brothers too. Not in the room, outside. You won't feel alone that day. She held the phone. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, he said. She didn't tell him not to come. She dressed carefully on Tuesday morning. She did not have many options. A gray blazer she'd kept for years because blazers lasted if you cared for them, and a navy blouse and dark slacks that still fit. She put on the small pearl earrings that had been her mother's because her mother had been a woman who faced difficult rooms with her back straight and her face composed, and wearing them was a way of bringing that into the courtroom with her. She drove to Billings. She found parking 3 blocks from the courthouse. She walked. Wade Flynn was waiting at the bottom of the steps. I was 55, built like a man who had done hard labor until 30 and kept going to the gym afterward out of principle. Gray beard, reading glasses on a chain, a dark blue suit that had been pressed by someone who knew what they were doing. How are you? He said. Ready, she said. Good. He looked at her steadily. You listen. When it's your turn, you answer the question asked, not the question you wish had been asked. You don't look at Gary. You look at me or at the judge. If something is said and it's not your turn to respond, write it on the notepad. This is going to be over by lunch. Tell me why we win, she said. He put his hands in his pocket. Gary Briggs has no relationship with those children. His financial interest in the estate is documentable, and I have documented it. You have stable employment in a safe home and 2 healthy children in school. Gary's photographs are 8 weeks out of date, and mine look like a different house, which it functionally is. Gary's private investigator cut your tires last week, and I filed that documentation this morning. And judges do not look kindly on people who file custody petitions for children's welfare and then send someone to commit property crimes against those children's grandmother. He paused. And I have not lost a custody case in 11 years. She nodded. They went in. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, high windows, yellow light. Gary was already at the right-hand table with 2 lawyers. One young and polished, one older and solid, the kind of man who occupied a courtroom the way furniture occupied a house. Gary looked up when she came in. He did not smile. He looked at her with flat assessment and looked away. She recognized it as a tactic. She let it go past her. She sat at the left-hand table with Wade and put her hands on the surface open and looked at the judge's bench. The Honorable Carla Meeks came in at 9:03, 60 years old, silver-haired, with the compressed efficiency of someone who had been running courtrooms for a long time and had very little patience for theater. She reviewed the submissions briefly and looked up. We're here on a petition for modification of guardianship filed by Gary Briggs regarding the minor children. Caleb Kevin Briggs, age 7, and Lily Amanda Briggs, age 4, currently residing with their paternal grandmother, Donna Briggs, in Millhaven, Montana. Mr. Harmon, you may begin. The older lawyer stood up. I was good. He walked through the financial history with precision and without apparent malice, which was somehow worse than malice, because it made everything sound like neutral fact. The reduced hours, the missed payments, the August assessment. He submitted photographs and she watched the judge look at them. He talked for 35 minutes. Wade sat beside her, making small notes. He had told her the initial presentation was designed to feel overwhelming, and she was not to let her expression shift based on how it sounded because the judge was watching both tables. She kept her face steady. She kept her hands flat on the table. Then it was Wade's turn. He stood up, thanked the court, introduced himself, and said he was prepared to address each of the petitioner's concerns. Then he said he'd like the court's indulgence for a brief line of inquiry directed at the petitioner before proceeding, as he believed it would provide important context. Gary was called to the stand. He walked to it with the ease of a man who was not worried. Wade approached. Mr. Briggs, when was the last time you visited your nephew and niece, Caleb and Lily Briggs? Gary looked at his lawyers briefly. I haven't been able to visit recently due to my work schedule. Mr. Briggs, Wade said, when was the last time? I would have to check my calendar. Your Honor, Wade said, I'm noting for the record that no documentation of any visit to the minor children exists in the discovery materials we received, which were comprehensive. He turned back. Mr. Briggs, have you visited Caleb and Lily at any point in the past 8 months? A long pause. No, Gary said. Have you called them, video called, sent cards, or gifts on their birthdays or holidays? I've been, yes or no? No. Have you provided any financial support to the children or to their guardian in the 8 months since their father's death? No. Wade turned to the judge. Your Honor, the petitioner is asking this court to remove a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old from the care of the woman who has been their sole parent figure for 8 months. A woman who has maintained their home, enrolled them in school, ensured their medical care, and by all documented accounts provided stable and loving care. He paused. In those same 8 months, the petitioner has not visited those children once, has not called them, has not sent a birthday card. Another pause. The court may wonder why a man with no relationship with these children has invested in a legal team of this caliber to argue for their custody. I can answer that question. He submitted the estate documents, the trust valuation. He explained clearly and without inflammatory language that the estate held in trust for Caleb and Lily was currently administered by their legal guardian, and that the only individual who stood to gain material benefit from a change of guardianship was the petitioner himself. Gary's lawyer stood up. The judge held up one finger without looking at him, and he sat back down. Wade submitted the current home documentation. The walkthrough photographs from Thursday, the living room with furniture, the kitchen with a stocked pantry, the children's room with real beds and drawings on the wall. Earl's employment letter, the first 2 pay stubs, the health insurance enrollment confirmation. He submitted Garrett's documentation of the tire incident with photographs of the private investigator's vehicle and time-stamped images of the investigator in the parking lot of Holden Automotive on the afternoon in question. He stated calmly that this documentation had also been submitted to the Hardin Police Department that morning. The judge looked at Gary Briggs for a long moment. Gary's older lawyer stood up and said something very quietly. The judge looked at him and said, I've heard enough from this table, Mr. Harmon. She read her notes for a moment. Then she looked up. I'm going to be direct, she said. This court's obligation is the welfare of the minor children. I have reviewed both parties' documentation. They describe materially different circumstances, and I note that the petitioner's documentation describes conditions as of August, while the respondent's describes the current situation. I have also reviewed the petitioner's record of contact with the minor children, which is a record of complete absence. She looked at Gary. Family relationships are not established through legal filings. Guardianship is not something this court removes from a capable, attentive caregiver in order to place children with a biological relative who has demonstrated no relationship with them whatsoever. She paused. The petition is denied. Guardianship remains with Donna Briggs. The documentation submitted regarding harassment of the respondent has been referred to the appropriate authorities. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. Donna sat perfectly still. Wade put his hand on her forearm. Donna. She looked at him. That's it, he said. It's done. She nodded. She pressed her lips together. She nodded again. Gary and his lawyers gathered their papers and left with the efficient exit of people who needed to be somewhere else immediately. He did not look at her on the way out. She thought about calling after him and decided against it. The judge was still in the room, and she had more dignity than the moment required. She stood up. Wade held her hand a beat longer than a handshake. Go home to your kids, he said. She walked out of this courthouse. The sun had come out while she was inside. October sun, low and sharp, cutting through everything. She saw them. 47 motorcycles lined along the street in both directions, from the courthouse steps parked with the precision of people who had thought about this and arrived early and arranged themselves deliberately. A formal statement made in steel and chrome, and the willingness to ride 40 miles on a cold Tuesday morning for someone who had asked for expired bread in a grocery store. The men were standing beside their bikes. She knew some of them by now. Cobb, who had fixed her pipes in the dark of her basement. Watts, who had put her electrical panel right. Hank, who stood at the end of the first row with Barbara beside him, small and round and steady. Earl, wearing the only blazer she had ever seen on him, looking deeply uncomfortable in it, in a way she found unexpectedly moving. Wade, who had come down the steps and gone quietly to his own bike because he understood this moment belonged to someone else. Rex was at the front. I was not wearing his vest. I was wearing a plain, dark jacket with his hands at his sides, and he was looking at her the way he had looked at her the first time in the grocery store, not with pity, not with anything that needed to be managed or deflected or survived. Just steady, just there. She walked down the steps. She crossed the sidewalk. She stopped in front of him. She was 58 years old, and she had buried her son and raised his children and asked for expired bread in a grocery store, and she had not come apart, not once, not in front of anyone who needed her to be solid. She was not going to come apart now. She was. She put her hand over her mouth. Rex put his arms around her. Not soft, not delicate. The way you hold someone in a storm, not to stop the storm, but to make sure they don't blow away. She let herself be held. 30 seconds, maybe 40. Then Caleb's voice cut through it. She pulled back and turned, and there he was running up the courthouse steps in his school clothes with his backpack still on, because Mrs. Patterson had apparently driven him here, and she could see Mrs. Patterson's car at the curb, and Mrs. Patterson herself standing on the sidewalk with Lily on her hip waiting. Caleb ran straight into her, and she caught him. Did you win? He said. She looked down at him. Yes, she said. We won. I thought about this for exactly 1 second. Didn't we get hot dogs for dinner? Someone behind her laughed. She laughed. She held her grandson against her chest and laughed in the October sun in front of 47 motorcycles and the men who had ridden them. And she thought about Kevin and about the grocery store and about $5.17 and about how the world is neither as cold as your worst days tell you, nor as warm as your best days make you hope. But somewhere in the middle, there are people who show up, and sometimes they show up on motorcycles. And sometimes they are exactly what you needed most in the world. Hot dogs it was. She drove home with the windows down, even though it was cold, because she needed the air on her face and the sound of the world moving. Caleb talked about motorcycles, and Lily fell asleep in her car seat with a half-eaten cracker in her hand and the stuffed cat from Barbara pressed against her cheek. She made hot dogs exactly the way Caleb liked them. Yellow mustard only because he had always refused the fancy kind, and she put chips on the plate and apple slices because some things were non-negotiable, and they sat at the kitchen table and ate. Caleb told her about a boy in his class who had claimed to have ridden a motorcycle, which Caleb found implausible given the boy's age. Donna confirmed the implausibility and suggested the boy had perhaps ridden with an adult. Caleb considered this and accepted it. Lily ate everything on her plate. This was new or newish. A thing that had started in the weeks after Rex had come, after the pantry had been filled, after the radiator had started working again. Lily ate with appetite now, without the careful, small bites of a child who has been hungry enough times to approach food with caution. Donna noticed it every time and was grateful and said nothing. She got them to bed. She sat at the kitchen table for a while. She thought about Kevin, about the year before the accident when they'd had a slow-building disagreement about something. She could no longer entirely reconstruct the specifics of one of those frictions that grows from love and proximity and different ideas about how to live and about the fact that she hadn't resolved it before the phone rang. She carried that now, not as regret exactly, more like a weight she knew was there and had learned to walk with. She thought about Mary, Rex's sister, the woman she had never met who had stood in front of a different counter in a different town and been too proud to ask the question that might have changed things. She thought about how many women were standing in front of counters right now with questions they couldn't make themselves say out loud. She thought about Rex. She picked up her phone. She called. He answered on the second ring. "We had hot dogs," she said. He laughed. A real one, the first full laugh she had heard from him. It was a good sound. "I heard," he said. "Caleb told Cobb who told me." "That communication chain is extremely efficient," she said. "It's a well-run organization," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "Thank you," she said, "for all of it, from the beginning." I was quiet for a moment, too. "Get some sleep," he said. "Your kids need you rested." "You keep saying that." "Keep being true." She smiled and set the phone down and went to bed and slept. 3 months passed the way good months pass, which is to say, you don't notice them in real time, and then you look back and see how much had moved. Donna got her first paycheck with the raise and stood in the bank parking lot after the deposit and looked at the number on the receipt for a long time. Not because it was a fortune, it wasn't, but because it was enough, and enough had not been the operative word in her life for so long that the word itself felt like something she needed to relearn the weight of. She paid the utilities current. She paid down the credit card balance she'd been carrying since March. She bought Caleb new shoes because he'd been wearing shoes a half size too small for 6 weeks, and she had known it and not been able to do anything about it. And watching him walk the store in shoes that actually fit his feet was something she would carry quietly for a long time. She bought Lily a real winter coat, not from the church donation box where Lily's coat had come from and which had been warm enough, but had a puppy zipper pull that Lily had expressed strong and sustained feelings about. The new coat was purple with no puppy. Lily wore it to school and reported that 3 people had said it was nice. Earl made her office manager in December. He did it on a Tuesday afternoon, standing in the doorway with a coffee mug, saying it the way Earl said most things directly and without preamble. Office manager as of January 1st, 26 an hour, authority over anything in this building that isn't a car. "You want it?" She said yes. He went back into the shop. She told Rex that night, and he said, "I know," which meant Earl had already told him, which was the kind of thing she had come to understand about the Holden brothers. They communicated in ways that did not always involve her, but frequently concerned her, and she had decided this was a feature rather than a problem. January brought snow and Caleb's birthday and a party at the clubhouse, organized entirely by Barbara. 47 people. Hot dogs because Caleb had made his preferences known. A motorcycle-themed cake with a Harley topper that Barbara had ordered specially. Rex gave Caleb a book about motorcycles, which was the correct gift. Caleb read 3 chapters before bed, fell asleep with it open on his chest. Donna stood in his doorway and looked at him. She thought this is what it was supposed to look like. A boy asleep with a book he loves, a warm house, a person in the doorway who was not afraid. February and a thing she had been pushing to the back of her mind since October asked to be thought about directly. She was at the kitchen table on a Sunday evening, kids in bed, and she was thinking about Rex. She had been thinking about Rex in a way that she had been carefully not thinking about Rex for approximately 4 months, which was the kind of careful not thinking that takes more energy than the thinking it's trying to avoid. She was 58 years old. She had been a widow for 9 years. She had not been in anything resembling a relationship since Kevin's father had left when Kevin was 12. She was not sure she knew how to be in one anymore. She was not sure she wanted to find out. She thought about what it would mean practically. 2 people in their 60s, both with complicated histories, both with the specific wariness that comes from having survived difficult things by learning not to need too much. She thought about Caleb and Lily, who had already attached to Rex in the way children attach to people they feel safe around. She mentioned it to Barbara at the February Sunday lunch while they were doing something with the dessert situation in the kitchen. Barbara said, without looking up from what she was doing, He's been thinking about the same thing for 3 months. Donna looked at her. He gets a particular look, Barbara said. I've been watching it since October. He's going to wait for you to be ready, because that's what he does. He does not push. He has never once in all the years I've known him pushed. She looked up. So, Donna thought about it for 2 more weeks. On a Wednesday evening in late February, she called Rex and said she'd like to get dinner sometime, just the two of them, if he wanted to. She said it the way you say things when you've been rehearsing and then decide to stop rehearsing and just say them. I was quiet for a moment. Saturday, he said. Saturday, she said. It was, as it turned out, not complicated. Two people who knew how to be quiet and how to listen and how to show up had dinner at a restaurant in Billings. Neither of them had been to before, talked for 3 hours, closed the place down. On the way to the parking lot, he asked if she'd want to do this again, and she said yes. That was in February. By March, it was something she didn't have a word for yet, which was fine because she had learned that the most important things rarely arrived with their names attached. The moment that closed the circle came on a Saturday morning in March, 5 months after a Tuesday afternoon in October. She was at the big chain grocery store on the east side of town. She had a cart, she had money in the account, she had a list. She had Caleb beside her evaluating cereal options, and Lily in the cart seat asking about strawberries. They're back, Donna said, putting strawberries in the cart. March, they're back. Lily accepted this with the equanimity of a child who has come to believe that if she asks consistently enough, eventually the strawberries appear. They were in the bread aisle when Donna noticed the woman, young, maybe 28, 29. Thin jacket for March. Hair pulled back in a way that said she had not planned to be seen today. She had a single item in her hand, a loaf of white bread, the store brand, cheapest on the shelf, and she was looking at the price sticker with the expression of someone doing math in their head. The specific, focused, private math of near nothing. Donna recognized it. She recognized it the way you recognize your own handwriting, the way you recognize the shape of something you have been inside. The woman put the bread back, picked it up again, held it. She was working herself towards something, toward a question she couldn't quite make herself ask yet. Donna said to Caleb, "Take the cart to the end of the aisle and wait for me. Don't let your sister talk you into adding anything." Caleb herded the cart away with the expression of a boy who understood that adults sometimes needed a minute. Donna walked down the aisle. She stopped beside the woman. The woman looked up. Her eyes had the particular kind of exhausted that lives in the face of someone who has been keeping everything together by sheer force of will for longer than they expected to have to. "Hey," Donna said. The woman looked at her, guarded. "I've been where you are," Donna said, keeping her voice low, the way Rex had kept his voice low in that store 5 months ago, not making anything into a scene, just one person to another. "I know what you're about to ask. You don't have to ask it." She paused. "Come with me for a few minutes." The woman shook her head. "I'm fine." "I know," Donna said. "I know you're fine. I was fine too." She held the woman's gaze steadily. "It's not charity, it's groceries. People buy groceries every day. Today I'm buying yours. That's all this is." The woman stared at her. "I have kids," she said. "I know," Donna said. "How many?" "2, 3, and 5. Mine are 7 and 4. She nodded toward the end of the aisle where Caleb was visible, doing his level best to prevent Lily from adding things to the cart. "Come on." They walked through the store together. Her name was Renee. She had two boys, Owen and Max. She was working front desk at a hotel 26 hours a week. Her husband had left in the summer. She was doing the math every day. Donna let her pick. She handed Renee the bigger jar of peanut butter. She added the name brand cereal next to the store brand and said, "For Saturdays, Saturdays should have something special for breakfast. That's a rule." Renee looked at the two boxes. "Saturdays," she said quietly. "That's a rule," Donna said again. They got to the register. The bill came to $142. Donna paid with her card. In the parking lot, Donna loaded Renee's trunk the way Rex had loaded hers 5 months ago. Methodical, heavy things at the bottom. Bread on top, not letting her help. Because sometimes the point is being allowed to receive something without having to be useful at the same time. She closed the trunk. Renee was trying to find words and not finding them. Donna took out the small notepad she kept in her purse, a habit she'd developed since Wade had given her one before the hearing, and she wrote Rex's number on a page and tore it out carefully and put it in Renee's hand. "His name is Rex," she said. "He runs a motorcycle club. I know exactly how that sounds. Call it anyway. Anything you need anytime. They will come. They don't ask for anything back. They just come." Renee looked at the paper. Why, she said. Donna thought about a Tuesday afternoon in October, about the bell above a door, about a man who had lost his sister and made a promise in the dark of his grief and kept it, about what it cost him and what it gave him and what it had given her and what it meant to pass it forward. Because somebody did it for me, she said, and now I do it for the next person. That's all it is. Renee pressed the paper against her palm. Drive home safe, Donna said. She watched the car leave the lot. She stood in the March sun for a moment. Then she turned around and walked back to her cart. Caleb was waiting with the expression of a boy who had very specifically not added anything and felt this deserved recognition. You did well, she said. He stood up straight. Can we get the other good cereal? We already have the good cereal. The other good one. Absolutely not, she said. He accepted this with minimal protest. They finished the shopping and drove home, and she put groceries away with Lily's help, which made the process take twice as long, but was non-negotiable because Lily had strong feelings about pantry organization. She let Lily organize. Caleb made peanut butter toast and brought her a piece without being asked, which was a new thing, a March thing, a thing he had apparently decided he did now. She ate it at the kitchen table. It was good. That evening, she sat on the back porch with tea and watched the last of the March light go out of the sky in layers, pink and then orange, and then a blue. She had always loved the color of a day that was done and had meant something. She thought about Kevin. She thought about the phone call and the graveside and the morning she had sat in a parking lot with $5.17 in a decision to make. She thought about Rex, who at that moment was 40 minutes away, and who had texted her that afternoon to say Hank had decided to make his chili for Sunday, and she should prepare the children for a very good day. She texted back, noted, Lily will eat 3 bowls. He sent a single laughing face. She finished her tea. The sky had gone to deep blue, almost purple. She thought about Renee with 2 boys and a thin jacket and a loaf of white bread, and about the phone number in her hand, and about what would happen next, or might happen, or might not. You couldn't control it. You could only show up and say the thing and offer the hand. What happened after was up to the person holding it. She got up and went inside. She looked in on the kids, Caleb asleep with his motorcycle book, Lily with her cats arranged along the edge of her bed and one arm flung out beside her the way she slept when she was completely relaxed, as if even in sleep she was reaching for something. Donna stood in the doorway. She thought, this is what you hold on for. This exact thing. The sleeping children, in the warm house, in the knowledge that you did not let go, even when letting go would have been the easier thing. She turned off the hall light. She went to bed. Outside, the street was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, the highway made its low, continuous sound traffic moving through the Montana dark. The house held its warmth. The radiator ticked. The night was the ordinary kind of night that comes after a day when the right things happen, and those nights are the ones that matter most because they are not dramatic and they are not remarkable and they are everything. She closed her eyes. She thought about $5.17, which was not enough for anything, but which had, in the end, turned out to be exactly enough. Enough to be heard, enough for someone to stop. And that was how the whole thing had started. She slept, and somewhere in the city, a young woman named Renee put her children to bed and sat down in her kitchen and looked at a phone number written on a torn piece of notepad paper. She looked at it for a long time. She thought about her boys asleep down the hall. She thought about the woman in the bread aisle who had said, I know exactly how that sounds, and call it anyway without flinching. She picked up her phone. She dialed, and Rex Holden answered on the second ring. That was how it worked. Someone asks, someone answers, someone remembers, and the thing moves forward through the world. That is all. That is everything. She woke up the next morning to Lily standing at the foot of her bed, holding the stuffed cat from the clubhouse and asking if they could have strawberry oatmeal for breakfast. We don't have strawberry oatmeal, Donna said. We could cut the strawberries up small and put them in. Donna considered this. That's not a terrible idea. Lily looked satisfied. She padded out of the room with the cat under her arm, and Donna lay there for another moment, listening to the sound of small feet on the hallway floor, which was the sound she had started the day with every morning for 8 months, and which she had not once in those 8 months taken for granted. She got up. She made strawberry oatmeal. Caleb came down the stairs and looked at the oatmeal, and then looked at the strawberries on the counter and said, Did she convince you? She had a reasonable proposal, Donna said. She always has a reasonable proposal. Caleb said with the weary admiration of an older sibling who had been outmaneuvered one too many times. He sat down and picked up his spoon. This was the thing about mornings Donna had discovered. They were the truest measure of how things were going. When things had been at their worst in the early months after Kevin died, mornings had been the hardest part, the moment before you could suppress the first thought of the day, the moment when everything you were carrying was still right at the surface before the protective layers of motion and routine could build back up. She had driven to the cemetery one morning in February in her pajamas and sat in the car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before she could make herself go home and make breakfast. She had never told anyone that. But mornings now were different. Mornings now had the specific texture of a life that was, if not exactly what she had hoped for, then something real and present and inhabited. Lily with the strawberry proposal, Caleb with his evaluative expression, the kitchen with its full pantry shelves, the job waiting at the end of the morning commute, the Sunday lunches, the first of which was 2 days away. She ate her oatmeal. The strawberries were, as Lily had predicted, a good addition. There was a Monday at work in November that she thought about for a long time afterward. She had been at her desk entering invoices when one of the mechanics, a man named Rogelio, who had been with the shop for 11 years and who spoke in carefully considered sentences and rarely said more than was necessary, came to the door of the office and stood in the frame. "Miss Donna," he said. She looked up. "There's a woman outside," he said, "in the parking lot. She's been sitting in her car for a while. She looks like she might need something." Donna looked at him. "Okay," she said. She went out. The woman in the parking lot was maybe 42. She had a sensible car with a dented rear bumper and a parking sticker from an elementary school on the back windshield. She was sitting in the driver's seat with her hands on the wheel and her eyes straight ahead, in the particular stillness of a person who has driven somewhere and then not been able to make themselves get out. Donna walked up and tapped lightly on the window. The woman turned her head. Her eyes were dry, but had the look of eyes that had been doing significant work recently. Donna made the rolling down window gesture. Old habit. Most cars had buttons now. The woman found the button and the window went down. "Are you all right?" Donna said. "I was just—" The woman stopped. "I don't know why I pulled in here," she said. "I was driving and I just pulled in." Donna looked at her for a moment. "You want to come inside for a minute?" she said. "It's cold out here. We have a coffee maker." The woman looked at her. "Okay," she said. Her name was Patricia. She was a school librarian. Her husband had been laid off in August, and the bills had been mounting since September. And she had just come from the bank where she had tried to arrange a short-term loan extension and been declined, and she had gotten in her car and driven, and she had not known she was going to pull into a mechanic's shop parking lot until she was already doing it. They sat in the break room. Donna made coffee. She did not tell Patricia about Rex right away. She listened first the way she had learned to listen from watching Rex do it in her own kitchen. The way you listen when you understand that the person across from you does not primarily need solutions right now, they need to be heard. Patricia talked for 20 minutes. Then Donna told her about October, about the grocery store, about $5.17. She told it plainly without drama, the way you tell a thing that happened and is true. Patricia sat with her coffee cup and listened. "A motorcycle club," she said when Donna finished. "I know how it sounds," Donna said. "Call it anyway." She wrote Rex's number on a piece of paper from the notepad she'd started keeping in 3 locations: in the office, her desk drawer, her purse, the break room counter, because she had come to understand that this was a thing she was going to do regularly now, and she wanted to be ready. Patricia took the paper. "What do they do?" she said. "They show up," Donna said. "That's what they do. They show up and they help, and they don't ask for anything back." Patricia folded the paper and put it in her coat pocket. She finished her coffee and thanked Donna and went back out to her car. Donna watched her leave from the doorway. Rogelio appeared at her shoulder. "She okay?" he said. "She will be," Donna said. She went back to the invoices. 3 days later, Rex texted her, "Patricia, is she yours?" She texted back, "Met her Monday." She called. He texted, "Called Sunday night. Brothers went over Tuesday." She held the phone and looked at that for a moment. Then she texted, "Good." He texted, "You're going to run out of paper eventually." She texted, "Then I'll order more." She could almost hear the laugh. The Sunday lunches became a rhythm she depended on more than she had expected to. She had not had a consistent rhythm of community in many years. She had had Kevin, and Kevin had had his life and his friends and his world, which had overlapped with hers, but was not hers. She had had colleagues at the dental office who had been kind and with whom she had eaten lunch for 19 years, and who had sent a card when the office closed and whom she had not heard from since. She had had neighbors in the house she'd lived in before Kevin died, a house she'd sold after the move, people she had waved to from driveways and lent rakes to, and whose names she still remembered, but who belonged to a version of her life that was over. The iron-packed lunches were different. They were not polite. They were not carefully managed social obligations. They were full of noise and food and unsolicited opinions and people arguing about football teams and kids chasing each other around picnic tables and dogs that were theoretically not allowed but were always there and Hank pretending not to notice. They were the kind of gathering that assumed you were coming back next month without asking, which was a form of welcome she had not encountered in a long time. She brought things sometimes. She made Hank's peach cobbler recipe, which Barbara had written out for her on an index card in November, and brought it to the December lunch. Hank looked at it with the expression of a man deeply uncertain about whether someone else's version of his own recipe would meet his standards, took a bite and said, "Decent," which Barbara told her afterward was equivalent to high praise. She started helping Barbara with the setup, not because she was asked to, but because she showed up early enough one Sunday to find Barbara and one other woman moving tables in the covered area alone, and she could lift a table, so she did. After that, she just did it every month. She and Barbara talked while they worked, which was how she learned about Hank's childhood in eastern Montana, and about the 2 years Rex had spent away from the club in his 40s, and about Mary a little gently, the way you approach something that someone carries carefully. He blamed himself for a long time, Barbara said one Sunday morning while they were setting up chairs. He was the older brother. He thought he should have known how bad it was. How did he stop? Donna said. Barbara was quiet for a moment. I don't know that he exactly stopped, she said. I think he found something to do with it instead. She set a chair down. That's usually how it works with grief. You don't get over it. You find somewhere to put it where it can do something other than just hurt. Donna thought about that for a long time. She thought about it in the car on the way home that Sunday, and she thought about it on Tuesday morning, getting ready for work, and she thought about it standing at the kitchen window, watching the yard in the gray November light. She thought about Kevin, about what it would mean to find somewhere to put that grief where it could do something other than just hurt. She thought about the grocery store and Renee and Patricia and the notepads she kept in 3 locations. Maybe she had already been doing it. Maybe that was what this was. She started keeping a notebook, not a journal exactly. She had tried to keep journals before and had always found the blank page quality of them oppressive, the sense that she had to have something worth saying before she was allowed to write. This notebook was different. She wrote down practical things, names and situations, and what had helped and what hadn't. She wrote down Rex's number, Wade's number, Earl's direct line, Barbara's cell. She wrote down the name of the food bank in Hardin that one of the mechanics' wives had mentioned ran a quiet backdoor program for people who didn't want to be seen walking in the front. She wrote down the contact at the county's emergency utility assistance fund that Linda at Millhaven Family Grocery had told her about in passing one Thursday when she'd come in for milk. She was building something. She did not yet have a full picture of what it was, but she was building it the way you build anything real, incrementally, by paying attention and writing things down. In December, a young man came to the shop asking if there was any labor work available. He was 22 years old and recently out of prison for something nonviolent that he had done when he was 17, which he told Earl directly and without apology, the way a person tells a difficult truth they have made peace with carrying. His name was Brendan. He had a firm handshake and clean boots and a willingness to stay late and learn whatever needed learning. Earl hired him to do the shop's cleaning and general labor work. Within 6 weeks, Brendan was showing a genuine aptitude for basic diagnostics, and Earl moved him to a bay on a trial basis under the supervision of Rogelio. Donna had lunch with Brendan in the break room the first week. She asked him what he needed, and he said he needed to get on his feet and he was figuring it out. She gave him the notebook she'd been writing in and told him to keep it and call any number in it if he ever hit a wall. I looked at the notebook. Why, he said. She told him about October, about the grocery store, about $5.17. He listened the whole way through. So you just pass it on, he said. That's all it is, she said. He put the notebook in his back pocket and went back to his bay. Rex heard about this, somehow, the way Rex heard about most things, through the specific information network of a man who had been paying attention in this county for 30 years. You gave him the notebook, Rex said. I made myself a new one, she said. I was quiet for a moment, and then he said, I think I know what you're doing. Tell me, she said. I was quiet for a moment longer. Mary used to say that the worst thing about being alone when things got bad wasn't the bad things. It was the feeling that the bad things were specifically yours, that nobody else had ever been in this exact situation, and that was why nobody was coming. He paused. What you're doing is making the situation recognizable, making it so that when someone is in it, they can see that other people have been in it and came out the other side and that there's a hand waiting for them. She thought about that. Yes, she said, that's what I'm doing. Good, he said. They were quiet together for a moment on the phone, the comfortable silence of people who had gotten past the point of filling silences for the sake of filling them. Saturday, he said. Saturday, she said. She had dinner with him on Saturday, and they went to a place in Billings with good bread and a fireplace in the back. And they talked for 4 hours without running out of things to say, which was the clearest sign she had ever encountered that a thing was worth continuing. Christmas was quiet and warm. She did not have a great deal of money to spend on gifts, but she had more than she'd had in October, and she had Barbara's advice on what Caleb would actually play with versus what would end up under the bed after 2 weeks, and she had Hank's recommendation for the specific set of toy tools that Caleb had been eyeing at the hardware store and had not asked for because he was 7 years old and understood in the uncanny way of children who have spent time in financial uncertainty that some things you didn't ask for. She got him the tools. She got Lily a set of high-quality colored pencils, the real artist's kind, because Lily drew the way some people breathe constantly, involuntarily, as if the drawing was the natural exhale of whatever was going on inside her. She got her a sketchbook that was thick and heavy and had a clasp. She got them both new pajamas because they needed them. On Christmas morning, Caleb opened the tools and looked at them for a full 30 seconds before he said anything long enough that Donna wondered if she'd miscalculated. Then he looked up and said, these are real ones. They're real ones, she said. He held the box against his chest. Lily opened her colored pencils in the sketchbook and had them arranged on the kitchen table and was already drawing before Donna had finished her first cup of coffee. Rex came by in the afternoon with Hank and Barbara and Cobb and his wife and 3 of the other brothers and their families, which was apparently what happened at Christmas when someone in the extended orbit of the Iron Pact was alone on Christmas, which Donna technically wasn't. She had the kids, but the intention was clear, and she was grateful for it. Hank brought a ham, Barbara brought a pie, Cobb's wife brought a dish of scalloped potatoes that Donna was going to need the recipe for. Rex sat on the new couch that had arrived the second Sunday after he'd first come to her house, and he drank coffee and talked to Caleb about the tools with the specific attention of a man who understood that a 7-year-old boy explaining something important needed to be listened to completely. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched all of it. She thought about the thermostat set to 58 degrees. She thought about the mattresses on the floor and the laundry baskets along the wall. She thought about $5.17 and a loaf of white bread and a question asked out loud in a small grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon. She thought about what it took to ask, not bravery exactly, not in the dramatic sense, just the willingness to say the thing out loud, even when you were afraid of what happened next. Just the willingness to let yourself be seen, even when being seen felt like a risk. She had asked a question in a store, and a man had been there to hear it, and because of that, her grandchildren had real beds and real meals, and a grandmother who slept at night. And now she was standing in a warm house on Christmas Day, watching people she had not known 4 months ago make her children laugh. Asking was the hardest part. Everything after that was just people deciding to be human to each other. January again, a year after Kevin died and she went to the cemetery. She had not been since the burial. She had told herself it was because it was too cold, or because she couldn't take the kids, or because she was working, all of which were true in their way, and none of which were the whole truth. The whole truth was that she had not trusted herself to go and come back whole, and she had needed to stay whole for Caleb and Lily. She went on a Saturday morning while Rex had the kids. He had offered to take them to the shop and let Caleb help with a minor tire rotation on a car whose owner had specifically requested that a 7-year-old be involved in the process. And Lily was going to sit in the waiting room and draw the cats that lived in the shop, of which there were 2. She drove to the cemetery alone. She sat in the car for a few minutes, the same way she had sat in the parking lot of Millhaven Family Grocery in October, the same winter sky. She got out. She found the stone. Kevin Daniel Briggs, beloved son and father. She had picked those words. beloved son and father. She had stood in the funeral director's office with a pamphlet in her hands, and she had said those words out loud in a voice that had not been entirely steady, and the funeral director had written them down. She stood in front of the stone. She talked to him for a while. She told him about the job, about Earl, about the shop. She told him about the Sunday lunches in Barbara's peach cobbler and the way Caleb had started talking about motorcycles with the kind of focused enthusiasm that Kevin had once had for baseball cards. She told him about the court case and about Gary and about what Wade had done and about 47 motorcycles in front of the courthouse. She told him about Rex. She said that part carefully. She said it the way you say something to someone you love when you are not certain what they would think, when you can't ask them anymore. And so you have to trust that what you knew of them while they were alive gives you enough to go on. She thought that Kevin would have been glad. She thought he would have liked Rex, not for any reason she could fully articulate, just the sense that the two men shared certain qualities that she had always valued and that did not always come in the same package. The willingness to show up, the preference for doing over talking about doing, the specific way of being with children, direct and honest and completely unpatronizing, that Kevin had always had and that Caleb now sometimes demonstrated having absorbed it from somewhere. She stood at the stone for a long time. Then she said, "I'm okay. We're okay. I want you to know that." She drove home. Rex was in the kitchen with Caleb and Lily when she came in. Caleb was demonstrating something involving the toy tools. Rex was listening with his full attention. Lily was drawing at the table, periodically looking up to offer commentary on Caleb's demonstration that Caleb received with the long-suffering patience of a sibling who has no choice. Rex looked up when Donna came in. She was fine. She had cried in the car on the way home, and she had stopped by the time she turned onto her street, and she was fine. He looked at her for a moment. "Coffee," he said. "Please," she said. "I'm out of coffee." She sat at the kitchen table and watched her grandchildren and listened to Caleb explain the difference between a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head, which Lily apparently already knew and felt was being belabored. She was fine. She was better than fine. She was in the way that matters most exactly where she was supposed to be. Spring came the way. Montana spring comes, which is to say grudgingly and with several feints toward retreat before committing. But it came. The yard went from dead brown to tentative green. The morning stopped requiring a heavy coat before 7. The Millhaven Elementary Spring Carnival was announced, which Caleb had opinions about, and the clubhouse planning meeting for the summer road trip to the coast was announced, which Rex had opinions about. And Earl mentioned expanding to a ninth bay and asked Donna to run the numbers, which she was happy to do. She ran the numbers on a Thursday afternoon with the window open because it was warm enough now to have the window open, which was a small thing, and also not a small thing, and she was almost done when her phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. It said, "This is Renee. I don't know if you remember me. You bought my groceries in March. I'm calling because I wanted to tell you that I called the number you gave me, and the man named Rex sent some people to my house. And one of them is a woman named Barbara, who has been helping me find a job, and I got one yesterday at a law office doing filing and records management. It's 20 hours a week to start, but there's more after 90 days, and there's health insurance. I just wanted you to know. I wanted to say thank you." Donna read the text twice. She set the phone down on her desk. She sat very still for a moment. Then she picked the phone back up and typed, "I remember you. I'm so glad. Call any of those numbers whenever you need to. That's what they're there for." She sent it. She looked out the open window at the spring afternoon. The numbers on her screen, the Ninth Bay expansion, stopped mattering for a moment. The invoices stopped mattering. The filing deadline stopped mattering. Everything stopped for a moment while she sat with what had just happened, which was a woman she had met for 30 minutes in a grocery store had gotten a job and wanted her to know. The circle moved. That was what it was. Not a circle exactly, more like a wave. The way a stone thrown into water sends rings outward that you can't see where they stop. Rex had thrown the stone when he walked into a grocery store in October and heard a woman ask for expired bread. She had thrown the stone in March when she walked down a bread aisle toward a woman with thin jacket. Renee had thrown a stone when she dialed a number on a piece of torn notepad paper. Barbara had thrown a stone when she helped Renee find a job. And somewhere out ahead of all of them, rings were still moving outward that none of them would ever see. That was the whole thing. That was all of it. She went back to the numbers. She finished the expansion analysis by 4:15 and left the shop at 3:30 the way she always did, because Earl ran a tight schedule, and she managed her time right during the day, and that was the deal. She picked up Lily from Mrs. Patterson's. She picked up Caleb from the after-school program, where he went on Thursdays because Donna had signed him up in November, and he had, after an initial period of skepticism, become intensely invested in the Tuesday-Thursday robotics module. She drove home. She made dinner. She helped Caleb with the reading assignment and listened to Lily's account of an elaborate disagreement among the children in her class about the correct rules for a game that had apparently no formal rules to begin with. She got them to bed. She sat at the kitchen table. She thought about the text from Renee. She thought about Mary, who she would never meet, but who felt more real to her now than many people she had actually known. Because Rex talked about her sometimes not in a way that was heavy with grief, but in the way you talk about someone whose presence is still somehow in the room who changed how you move through the world. She thought about her own notebook, the second one now, since she'd given the first to Brendan, which was getting full of names and numbers and small notes about what had helped in what situations. She thought about what it would mean to formalize this somehow. Not a business, not an organization, nothing that required paperwork and a name. Just a way of ensuring that the information could move to where it was needed. The phone numbers, and the resources, the accumulated knowledge of how to get through a bad stretch when you had almost nothing, which was knowledge that turned out to be extremely specific and extremely useful to people in that situation, and which was not the kind of knowledge that showed up in pamphlets or on websites. She wrote a note to herself at the bottom of a page in the notebook. Talk to Rex, talk to Barbara, talk to Wade about what this could look like. She closed the notebook. She got up and washed the dishes. She went to bed. The next Sunday at the clubhouse, she talked to Rex after lunch while the kids were running in the lot and Hank was doing something with the remaining chili that Barbara was diplomatically not commenting on. She told him about Renee's text. He listened. She told him about the notebook, about Patricia and Brendan and the numbers she'd been collecting. He listened to all of it. When she was done, he was quiet for a while. "What are you asking me?" he said. "I'm not asking anything yet," she said. "I'm thinking out loud." He looked at her. "It's a good thought," he said. "I know," she said. He almost smiled. "That's not modest." "I've gotten better at knowing when I'm right about something," she said. He did smile, then the full one. The one she'd heard on the phone the night she'd told him about the hot dogs, in which she had come to know as the clearest indicator that she had said something that genuinely pleased him. "Talk to Wade," he said. "He'll know what shape to give it." "I was going to say that," she said. "I know you were," he said. They sat together in the afternoon light, in the middle of the noise, and the children, and the smell of Hank's chili, and the familiar sound of 40 people who had decided that caring for each other was a thing worth making a habit of. And Donna thought about a Tuesday afternoon in October, in a grocery store, and a question asked out loud. And she thought about the particular and ordinary courage it takes to let yourself be seen when being seen feels like a risk. And she thought about all the people who had not asked yet, who were sitting in parking lots counting what they had, and she thought about what it meant to be ready when they did. She was ready. She had been ready since November, probably. She just hadn't had the words for it yet. Now she did. She looked at Rex. "Saturday," she said. "Saturday," he said. The day Donna met Wade Flynn for the first time outside of a legal context, he was sitting in a corner booth at a diner in Hardin, reading what appeared to be a very large file folder and eating a chicken salad sandwich with the focused indifference of a man who ate to continue working rather than for the pleasure of the thing. Rex had arranged it. He said Wade wanted to talk to her about what she described and that he had some thoughts and some contacts and that she should bring her notebook. She brought the notebook. Wade looked at it without touching it first, the way experienced people look at things before they pick them up. "How many entries?" he said. 43, she said. "Some are just names and numbers. Some have notes on what the situation was and what helped and what didn't." He picked up the notebook. He read through it, slowly turning pages, pausing at some entries longer than others. He set it down. He took off his reading glasses and held them by one arm. "This county has a number of programs for people in acute financial distress," he said. "The problem with most of them is that the people who need them most are often the people least equipped to navigate the process of accessing them. Applications, eligibility, criteria, documentation requirements, waiting periods. If you have the bandwidth to deal with all of that, you probably have some bandwidth left over for other things too. The people who are truly at the bottom tend to get stopped by the first form." "Oh, sorry, Mr. Home." "Yes," she said. "What you're describing," he said, is essentially a navigation layer. Someone who knows what's available, who can make a call and say, I have someone who needs X, and who has the personal credibility within the community to make that call carry weight. He paused. You've been doing this informally for 6 months. Rex has been doing it informally for years. The difference between what you do informally and what you could do with a little structure is the number of people you can reach. What kind of structure, she said. Not a nonprofit, too much overhead, too many reporting requirements for what this would be. Not a formal program, too much institutional friction. What I'm thinking is more like a documented network. Clear contact list, brief written protocol for how to assess a situation and what to offer. 2 or 3 anchor relationships, someone at the food bank, someone at county services, someone at a legal aid clinic. And a way for people to know the network exists without feeling like they're being put on a list. How do people find out about it, she said. Word of mouth, he said, which is how it's already working. You just make the word of mouth slightly more organized. Someone tells someone who tells someone. The key word is trust. Your network has credibility right now because it runs through Rex and through you. And you are both people who have demonstrated over time that you do what you say you will do and ask nothing in return. That credibility is the most valuable asset in this whole thing. Don't bureaucratize it away. She thought about that. The notebook becomes a resource, she said, not just for me, something that can be copied or shared. Exactly, he said. You build it carefully. You test it. You refine it as you learn what works. He picked up his sandwich. I can help you think through the legal parameters. What liability looks like and doesn't look like. What documentation you should and shouldn't keep. What conversations need to be off the record and which ones benefit from being on. He looked at her over the sandwich. This is pro bono. Don't insult me by offering to pay. She did not insult him. They met 3 more times in that spring, once more at the diner and twice at his office, which was a spare functional space above a hardware store in downtown Hardin, with a good view of the street and a coffee maker that was clearly his primary relationship with the building. Each time she brought the notebook, and he brought his systematic knowledge of every formal resource in a 200-mile radius. And by the end of the 3rd meeting, she had what she thought of as the second notebook, which was not her personal record of situations and contacts, but a practical guide, a clear and readable document that could be handed to someone who needed it or to someone who wanted to help but didn't know where to start. She showed it to Rex on a Sunday. He read it in the covered picnic area while the kids ran in the lot, and Hank made pointed observations about the quality of the previous month's cobbler from a woman he was looking at with no reproach whatsoever. Rex closed it. This is good, he said. It's a start, she said. Good starts tend to become good things, he said. He handed it back to her. He held it a beat longer than necessary before he let go, which was the most clearly demonstrative gesture she had ever seen from him in public, and which she registered accordingly. She put the notebook in her bag. She watched the kids in the lot. Caleb was trying to teach 2 of the younger children a game of his own invention that appeared to require neither equipment nor consistent rules, which made it either brilliant or unworkable. Lily had stationed herself near the shop-side door with her sketchbook drawing the 2 shop cats who were sitting in a square of afternoon sun with the absolute composure of animals who knew they were being observed and considered it appropriate. She thought about Mary again, about the promise Rex had made in the dark of his grief, about what it meant to carry something like that and let it do something useful rather than letting it just hurt. She thought about Kevin, about the fact that Kevin had been a man who believed in showing up for people. He had been like that since he was a child. She could remember him at 10 years old organizing a neighborhood collection for a family on their street, whose house had flooded, going door to door with a wagon and a list he'd made himself of what the family might need, presenting it with the earnest efficiency of a small person who had decided a thing needed doing and was doing it. I would have understood all of this, she thought. He would have approved, more than approved. I would have been part of it. That thought sat with her for a while, the way grief-adjacent thoughts sometimes did, not purely painful, not purely comforting, somewhere in that wide territory between the two, where most of the real thinking about people you've lost actually happens. She was part of it. That was something. That was enough. The spring road trip that the Iron Pact had been planning since January was a 7-day run to the coast. 42 bikes, which was most of the chapter, leaving the first week of June and going west through Idaho and Oregon to the Pacific. Rex asked her in March if she and the kids would want to come part of the way, as far as the mountains for the first 2 days, and then he'd arrange a ride back. She said yes. She had never been on a motorcycle. Rex taught her on a Sunday afternoon in the clubhouse parking lot, empty and flat. Road King idling slowly while he walked her through it with the same patient completeness he brought to everything. He did not make her feel slow or uncertain. He did not take over. He stood at the edge of the lot and watched and said what needed saying and let her figure out the rest, which was she had come to understand his fundamental approach to most things. She did not fall. She went 12 feet and stopped and went 12 more feet and stopped. And by the end of the afternoon, she had gone twice around the parking lot without stopping, which Rex said was excellent progress and which Caleb, watching from the fence, confirmed was in fact very impressive. I rode on the back with Rex for the first 2 days of the run, through the mountains, the two kids in the support van that Earl drove because Earl had decided this was a trip worth taking. She felt the road through the whole machine, felt the lean of the curves, felt the wind on her face at 60 miles an hour through the mountain passes, with the line of bikes ahead of them and the line behind them stretching out of sight in both directions. 42 people who had decided to go somewhere together, and the mountains were enormous, and the sky was that specific deep blue that high altitude gives you, and the road went on and on. She thought about nothing. That was the thing about it that surprised her. For 2 days, she thought about nothing, which was the first time she had been able to say that in a year and a half. Not because there was nothing to think about, because the road was enough, the wind was enough, the pure present tense physicality of the thing was enough, and the thinking could wait. She had not known she needed that until she had it. On the second evening, they stopped at a motel at the edge of a small town in Idaho where the mountains were close on both sides of the valley, and the light came through in long slants. Caleb fell asleep in the van before they stopped, which Earl reported with the specific pride of a man who had achieved something. Lily was awake and quiet, watching the mountains out the window. After dinner, while the brothers sat outside and the kids were in the motel room, Donna and Rex sat on the steps of the motel office in the last light, and she told him about the visit to the cemetery. She had not told him at the time. She told him now because enough time had passed that she could tell it as a thing that had happened rather than a thing that was happening. He listened. When she was done, she said, "I told him about you." Rex looked at the mountains. "What did you say?" he said. She considered this. "I said I thought he would have liked you, and I think you would have liked him." She paused. "He was the kind of person who showed up for people. It was just how he was built." Rex was quiet for a long time. "Tell me about him," he said. She told him about Kevin. She had not told anyone the real version in a long time. She had told the functional version, the outline version, the one that gave enough information for the person asking to feel they understood the situation. She told Rex the real version, the one with the baseball card collection and the terrible jokes and the way he called her every Sunday morning, regardless of whether either of them had anything in particular to say, and the way he had cried at Caleb's birth and then tried to pretend he hadn't, and the arguments and the reconciliations and the 31 years of a life that had been real and complete and was over. Rex listened to all of it. The mountains went dark while she was talking, and the stars came out. The mountain stars that had a different density than the plains stars, crowded and layered and somehow nearer. And the brothers were quiet outside, some of them already and some still, sitting with their coffee, and the world was entirely still in the way it sometimes gets still in mountains, as if the scale of everything has pressed the noise out. She finished. She was not crying. She had cried in the car after the cemetery, and she had cried for 4 minutes in her kitchen in October, and she had cried at the table in October with Hank nearby telling her to eat. And she had used what she'd needed to use, and she was not crying now. She was just sitting with it. Rex put his hand over hers on the step between them. Not romantic exactly, or not only romantic. Something else too. Something that said, "I heard all of that, and it matters, and I'm here." They sat like that while the mountains were dark and the stars were close. In the morning, she drove back with Earl and the kids while Rex took the run on west. He texted her a photograph from the Oregon coast 2 days later. Dark water, enormous rocks. The kind of sky that makes you feel appropriately small. She showed it to Caleb, who looked at it for a long time and then said, "I'm going to ride there someday." She said, "I think you will." Summer, the county carnival that came to Millhaven in July, and she took the kids and they ate everything and rode the things that were appropriate for their ages. And Donna won a stuffed bear at a ring toss booth that she did not need, and gave to Lily, who named it Rex because she appeared to be naming most large stuffed things Rex, now a fact that Donna relayed to Rex by text, and that produced another single laughing face. She added a third notebook in July. The second one was being passed around and copied, and she had heard from Wade that two other people had already started their own informal versions in adjacent counties, which was exactly what Wade had meant by organized word of mouth, and which she found satisfying in a very specific way. The third notebook was different from the first two. It was not a personal record, and it was not a resource guide. It was something she had started writing on Monday nights when the kids were in bed and the house was quiet. Not quite a journal, not quite a memoir, something between them. She wrote about Kevin, she wrote about the grocery store, she wrote about Rex's sister Mary in the way you write about someone you know only through the shape they left in someone else's life. She wrote about the mechanics' break room and Patricia in the parking lot and Renee's text and Brendan with a notebook in his back pocket. She wrote about 47 motorcycles in front of a courthouse and a 7-year-old boy asking if they could get hot dogs for dinner. She did not know what it was yet. She was writing it and she would find out. August and the kids' summer schedules wound down and the new school year arrangements came into focus. Caleb was going into third grade and had questions about whether his new teacher would be someone he could work with, which he phrased with the diplomatic care of a child who had learned to manage his own strong preferences. Lily was starting pre-K at the elementary school, which she had been anticipating for months, with the focused ambition of a person who has been watching an institution from the outside for some time and has extensive plans. On the first day of pre-K, Donna stood outside the classroom door after Lily had gone in, stood there longer than she needed to, because she could see through the small window in the door that Lily had immediately gone to the drawing supplies in the corner and had already spread out more colored pencils than was technically her allocation, and was drawing with a particular absorbed intensity that meant she was entirely in her own world and needed nothing from anyone. She was fine, better than fine. Donna drove to work. She went through the main door of Holden Automotive and waved at Rogelio in the first bay and went to her office and hung up her coat and sat down at her desk and opened her laptop and started the day. Through the window, the morning light was doing something specific to the gravel in the lot, turning it a warm gray that was almost silver. And somewhere down the road, a train was making its slow sound through town, the long horn and two notes that she had heard every morning since October and had stopped noticing and now noticed again the way you notice things when you are present enough to hear them. She had a meeting with Earl at 9 about the Ninth Bay expansion timeline. She had invoices to process and accounts to review, and the monthly report to prepare, and a call with the insurance carrier about the new coverage options. She had a good notebook in her bag. She had 2 sleeping children in 2 real beds in a warm house. She had a Sunday lunch in 4 days. She had a man who answered on the second ring. She had all of it. The work was the same work it had always been, the numbers and the calls and the filing and the decisions, but it was different in the way that work is different when you do it inside a life that makes sense instead of beside a life that is falling apart. The same functions, a different gravity. She did not take it for granted. She thought she never would. She opened the first invoice of the morning. Outside, a car pulled into the lot. It was an old sedan with a cracked rear window and a parking sticker from a school she didn't recognize. It sat in the lot for a few minutes, not long, but a specific kind of few minutes, the kind with a decision being made inside them. She watched it through her window. The driver's door opened. A woman got out. 40, maybe 45. Thin jacket for August. She stood beside her car and looked at the building. Donna was already standing up from her desk. She picked up her notebook. She walked out. She crossed the gravel lot. The woman looked up. "Hi, Ty," Donna said. "You look like you might be trying to figure something out. Can I help?" The woman looked at her. Donna smiled, not the managed smile of someone performing welcome, but the real one, the one she'd been practicing for 30 years. And that meant, "I see you, and I'm not afraid of what I see, and you don't have to be either." "Maybe," the woman said. "Come on inside," Donna said. "We have a coffee maker, terrible chairs, but the coffee's decent." The woman looked at her for another moment. Then she nodded. They walked inside together. And whatever came next, came next. That was how it worked. That was all it ever was. The coffee was decent. That was what the woman whose name turned out to be Diane said when she set the mug down after the first sip. "That's decent coffee." "I know," Donna said. "Earl doesn't know how to buy bad coffee. It's one of his better qualities." Diane was 43. She had a son in 5th grade and a daughter in 7th. She had been a dental hygienist for 14 years, and the practice she worked for had closed in February when the dentist retired. She had been looking for work for 5 months. The unemployment benefits were running out. She had a car payment and a lease she couldn't break, and a daughter who needed braces that were not going to happen this year, and a son who had outgrown his winter coat. She told Donna all of this in the break room over 40 minutes while the mechanics came and went for their own coffee, and nodded at Donna in the way of people who had come to understand that the woman in the office sometimes had conversations in the break room that were not their business and did not need to be made into their business. Donna listened to all of it. Then she opened her notebook. I'm going to give you some numbers, she said. Some of them are people, some of them are programs, and a couple of them are both. The most important one is a man named Rex Holden. When you call him, tell him Donna sent you. He's going to ask you a few questions, and then he's going to ask you what you need. Answer honestly. He's not going to judge you for any of it. He has never, in my experience, judged anyone for anything. Diane looked at the notebook. And the job situation, Donna said. You're a dental hygienist. I know someone who knows someone who is looking for dental office staff. It's not hygiene, it's office management, but, the environment and the terminology and the software, and that counts for more than people realize when you're walking into a hiring conversation. She wrote a name and a number. Call that woman this afternoon. Tell her I sent you. She'll give you an honest conversation. Diane looked at the paper. Why are you doing this? She said. Donna had been asked this a number of times now. She had a few different answers depending on the situation and the person asking. She thought about which one was right for Diane. Because about a year ago, I walked into a grocery store with $5.17 and a question I was afraid to ask out loud. She said, and someone heard it, and everything changed after that. She paused. So now I try to be the person who hears it. That's all. Diane was quiet for a moment. $5.17, she said. Everything I had, Donna said. Diane nodded slowly. I have a little more than that, she said. Good, Donna said. Then you're ahead of where I was. Call Rex today. Diane folded the paper and put it in her coat pocket, the way Renee had, the way Patricia had the same gesture, the careful and specific gesture of someone putting something away that they intend to use. She stood up. She shook Donna's hand. Thank you, she said. Drive safe, Donna said. She watched Diane's car leave the lot. The cracked rear window caught the morning light as it turned onto the road. She went back to her office. She updated the notebook. She went back to the invoices. Outside, the morning was doing what mornings in Montana do, which is move slowly and fully and without apology, Pim. Light changing by degrees across the gravel and the mountains in the distance, holding the horizon the way they always did. Patient and enormous and entirely indifferent to the small, necessary human things happening in their shadow. She was not indifferent. She was paying attention. That she had come to understand was the whole job. Not rescuing anyone, not fixing anything, just paying attention and being present and handing someone a phone number. And meaning it when you said they should call. Rex answered on the second ring. He always did. That was the thing. He always did.